What's wrong with progressive creation?
Well, to answer that question, the first thing we have to do is define what we mean by progressive creation. To start with, they believe that nature is like the 67th book of the Bible, and it is as reliable as the Word of God is. On the basis of that assumption, they accept the Big Bang, the millions of years, believe that the days are overlapping, and that God created different creatures every so often over millions of years. They accept that there was millions of years of death before Adam's sin. They believe that there were pre-Adamite soulless creatures that looked like humans but didn't have a soul. And they believe that Noah's flood was a local flood in the Mesopotamian Valley. And let's look at those ideas just briefly. Is nature the 67th book of the Bible? No, it is not. The Bible is the divinely inspired, inerrant, holy Word of God. It is propositional truth. Creation, on the other hand, is created by God, but cursed by God, and is nonverbal in its communication to us. So the Bible reveals that creation speaks to us about the existence of God and some of the attributes of God, but it doesn't tell us that we can work out a history of the world just by looking at the creation. We cannot trust what sinful scientists who are using anti-biblical assumptions to interpret the cursed creation. We cannot trust their interpretation and use that to interpret the Bible. Rather, we use the Bible to interpret the world that we live in. What about the Big Bang? Well, the order of events in the Big Bang are absolutely contrary to the order of events in Genesis. Just for one example, the Genesis account says that God created the earth before the sun, moon, and stars. The evolutionists say exactly the opposite. And the days are clearly not overlapping. God says first day, second day, third day, fourth day. And the days were completed. There was evening and there was morning one day. There was evening and there was morning a second day. What about death before the fall? Well, 6 times God says it was good in Genesis 1. At the end, he says it was very good. He tells us that the animals and the people were vegetarians at the end of Genesis 1. The judgment in Genesis 3 brought a curse on the whole creation, on the animals, on Adam and Eve, on the ground. The evolutionists say there are thorns in rock layers 350 million years old. They tell us that there are dinosaur bones with cancer in them. If those millions of years are true, then God lied. What about soulless pre-Adamite people? Well, the Bible doesn't speak about such creatures, and there's no scientific evidence because the soul is not preserved in the fossil record. So there's no way you can look at a skeleton that looks like a human being and say that it didn't have a soul. What about a local flood? There's lots of evidence in Genesis that this was a global flood. The purpose of the flood was to destroy all of the people, but also all of the animals and the birds not in the ark, and the earth itself. Genesis 6 tells us. The purpose of the ark was to save animals and birds and people. If the flood was local, the ark was totally unnecessary. The depth of the flood shows that it was global. The water rose above all the high mountains, Genesis 7 tells us. And the rainbow promise in Genesis 9 tells us that God promised never to send another flood, and he made the promise to the animals, to the birds, and the earth itself, not just to Noah. Jesus said, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the coming of the Son of Man. That flood was global, it affected the whole world, and Jesus' coming and judgment will affect the whole world.